When it comes to improving the acoustics of your room, there's an old saying that goes, you can treat the room or you can treat the sound. I've typically gone the latter route using Dirac room correction because it's quick and easy and it doesn't require hanging any of those strange looking, sometimes multifaceted panels from my walls and ceiling. After all, it's my living room, not my recording studio. Then I was offered the chance to review Andor Willow's wood slat panels, an architectural looking wall covering that promises improved acoustics. Do they deliver the sonic goods? Let's find out. I'm Aaron Jenkins, and here on the Absolute Sounds YouTube channel, I review entry-level high-end products, as well as those that might appeal to people who listen to music in real-world, often shared rooms. And speaking of shared spaces, even for those enthusiasts who like the appearance of the many diffusers, absorbers, bass traps, ceiling tiles, and everything else that's available on the room treatment market, these can be a very tough, if not impossible, sell to a partner or spouse. And that is where the Andor Willow panels come in. Wood slats or slat panels are far from new, and they've become a bit of a YouTube design craze recently. If you like the look, it's easy to understand why. My installation created a sort of room within a room feeling, giving some definition to my otherwise open space and adding a dramatic texture among all the smooth surfaces. The Andor Willow panels are sold in 2-foot widths, that total made up of 2 narrower panels with 8 half-inch wide slats on one and 7 on the other. Each 2-foot width and my 8-foot height cost $250, making my 14-foot spread a $1,750 investment. A 9-foot version is available for $350. The panels I chose are called White Oak and are the lightest color available, especially with their gray backing felt. The other darker available shades are Walnut, Brown Oak, and Smoked Oak, all of which have black backing felt, and there's also a white oak with black felt version. These slats aren't solid hardwood. They're medium density fiberboard, or MDF, with a wood veneer on the front face, and the slats are stapled from behind to a 0.4-inch thick PET felt backer. To install them, you simply screw through the felt into your wall. Or you can use adhesive, or as I did, screw wooden furring strips to the wall first and then screw the panels to them. I needed to cut a few of the panels, felt and all, and did so with a compound miter saw, but since it's MDF, you should be able to do the same with a jigsaw or a handsaw. If needed, the felt is easily cut with a razor blade. How you mount the panels, or specifically how much airspace is behind them, affects their acoustic qualities, both in terms of how much sound they absorb and which frequencies are absorbed. Andor Willow sent me the results of its ASTM C423-22 standard test method for sound absorption and sound absorption reverberation room method, parts of which are cited on its website. Briefly, if you attach the panels directly to your wall, Andor Willow's tests show a noise reduction coefficient of 0.55, which, as shown in the accompanying graph, means that from around 800 Hz up to 5000 Hz, the panels will absorb around 55% or more of the sound that hits them. From 1000 to 4000 Hz, they'll absorb 100% of sound, and there's a smaller amount of absorption from 800 Hz down to about 125. The panel's performance improves significantly if there's an airspace behind them. So, mounted on 1.5-inch deep furring strips, the NRC rises to 0.85, with roughly 85% of sound absorbed over a wider frequency range. And if you mount the panels like drywall on 2x4 studs with R13 insulation in the cavities, you'll get an NRC of 1.05, which translates into 90 to 100% of frequencies from around 160 Hz up to 5000 being absorbed. And if you're wondering how you get a coefficient higher than 1, Andor Willow says it's due to the testing method allowing for errors due to the panel's 3-dimensional surfaces. I knew just from propping up the panels on my front wall prior to installation that they would make a significant difference in the acoustics of my bare wood floor room. And in order to quantify that difference, I pulled out my mini DSP calibrated microphone, fired up Room EQ Wizard on my laptop, and took before and after measurements. I then looked at 2 functions inside REW. impulse response, and spectrogram. The impulse response graphs revealed that the volume level of a spike of sound dropped more quickly after the panels were installed by roughly 5 decibels at 50 milliseconds. And turning to the spectrogram, I found a reduction in decay times of 50 to 75 milliseconds from around 250 Hz up to 10,000 Hz. Both of these seemed like significant improvements on screen, and I didn't even have to fire up my system to hear the improvement in the real world. First, and instantly noticeable, my room was simply quieter. In addition to a newfound hush or sense of damping, walking past the panels in hard-soled shoes revealed that my footsteps simply weren't as loud as they'd been before. And when I began listening to music, I discovered I was able to reduce my usual listening level by around 5 decibels, thanks to the music simply coming to life at a lower volume than before. Second, there was audibly less reverberation. Experimental hand claps, which had echoed before the panels were installed, now died away with barely a hint of echo. And third, most important, musically, I heard improvements in several areas, starting with imaging. I happen to be listening to the B&W 705S3 stand mount speakers right now, and I'll be reviewing them soon. And like their 804D4 bigger brothers that Tom Martin reviewed about a month ago, they are very impressive when it comes to imaging. But after installing the Andor Willow panels, the B&W's already precise placement of musicians and instruments in space snapped into a noticeably clearer and tighter focus. This effect extended well down the frequency range, with bass guitars that had previously been located somewhere in the background now emanating from a precise point in space. I also heard a significant improvement in the sound space, as in hearing much more of the room where the recordings were made and less of the room I was listening in. Orchestras sounded more like they were playing in actual halls, and those concert halls sounded different from each other, while smaller jazz ensembles more often sounded like they were playing in smaller, much more intimate spaces. In addition, the Andor Willow panels cleared away a sonic haze, improving overall clarity and precision. Things like brush strokes and plucked strings were more delicate and better defined, while the overall sound was more detailed yet also smoother and more relaxed. And this newfound clarity also improved tonal purity, with voices and instruments sounding clearer, richer, lighter, and closer to being believably realistic. What all of this added up to was better musical engagement. I invited a friend over to hear my system after I had installed the panels, and while he couldn't really describe the differences from memory, he told me he felt an emotional connection to Bob Marley's Turn Your Lights Down Low that he hadn't experienced before the panels were installed. And strangely enough, that was exactly the example I had used with a different friend the day before. I've never been a big Bob Marley fan, but the Andor Willow panels helped reveal something new and special in his voice I've never heard before, not to mention the clarity of all the instruments and accompanying singers, and I ended up listening to the entire Exodus album, probably for the first time in my life. After a week or so of newfound sonic bliss, I put my 75-inch flat panel TV back in place on the front wall and ruined everything. Well, not really. I expected and heard a significant decrease in the panel's effect, and according to my final set of measurements, the impulse response with the TV on the wall was actually worse than just the bare wall, which I guess makes sense because the television sticks out a few inches. The spectrogram reading fell somewhere in between the bare wall and the panels, which is essentially how the room now sounds, and which is still a significant improvement. In my room, the Andor Willow wood slat panels both classed things up visually and delivered an impressive improvement in sound. Like the AudioQuest PQ303 power conditioner I reviewed in late 2023, the panels simply make everything sound better, from music to movies to footsteps. But where the PQ303's improvement was relatively subtle, the Andor Willow's effect was obvious and significant. It's one of those products that had me listening to old favorites and hearing them in distinctly new ways. And like a power conditioner, after hearing the effect of these panels in my room, I'll never go without some form of room treatment again. As an added bonus, installing the panels was about as easy as such things get, and I think, well, hope, it's also fairly friendly for renters like me, so long as you go with the furring strips rather than driving several dozen screws through the panels directly into your rental's walls. Finally, while I'm very impressed with their effect, let me state the obvious and say that the Andor Willow slat wall panels aren't the be-all and end-all of room treatment. Where many companies that make more traditional room treatments will virtually model your space and recommend a specific complement of bass traps, diffusers, and absorbers to address your specific issues, these panels are much more of a decorative element that also delivers a specific and limited acoustic effect. But then again, if these panels aren't an optimized room treatment for your particular space, they certainly don't look like one either.